Okay. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome along to this class. And it's called Recollecting Death to Benefit the Future. And my name is Eddie Peet. So let's begin as we normally do by setting our motivation and doing a short meditation. So please make yourself comfortable in your chair. In brief, this means that you have your back straight and your shoulders relaxed, and you can place your hands wherever you feel most comfortable. And allowing your body to breathe itself normally and naturally. And while you continue to breathe normally and naturally, be aware of the feelings associated with the in-breath and out-breath, and the movements that your body takes. Every movement your body makes in response to your inhalation and exhalation. Notice that your mind has become a little more focused and the body is feeling a little more relaxed. So the body feels easy and the breath is flowing easily and you are at ease. And from within that easy space, in front of you appears Shakyamuni Buddha, his body made of golden light. He's surrounded by your spiritual teachers, the mentors of the lineage, the Buddhas, the meditational deities, bodhisattvas, and so forth. While surrounding you at the level of your seat are all sentient beings. And all of us are facing this field of refuge. You recollect that everybody surrounding you is just the same as you are, and that you equally have a wish to avoid suffering and equally wish to be happy. And these two wishes equally have not yet been met. Nevertheless, the causes of suffering can be eliminated and genuine happiness can be experienced by us. But to do this, we need to rely upon a method and teachers of that method and a community. So our teachers and the expression of that method are in front of us. All sentient beings surround us. So we're going to take refuge on behalf of all sentient beings as a means to develop our wisdom and our compassion and every other skill set we have, and help others do the same. So I think this is what you want to do. And then we'll take refuge together and generate this aspiration by reciting the refuge and bodhicitta prayer 3 times together. So I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Now, to stabilize this wish of ours and to make it firm, recollect the 4 immeasurable thoughts and extend them to all the sentient beings who surround you. Then decide to establish all sentient beings into those 4 immeasurable states yourself. In response to our wishes, think that lights and nectars now pour from the heart of the Buddha in front and above you, washes over you and over all beings surrounding you. Every hindrance to those 4 immeasurable thoughts is washed away. And you find yourself and everyone surrounding you having immeasurable compassion, immeasurable love, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. Then acknowledging that you are in front of the refuge field, recite along with me and see yourself doing these things. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and I rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. And just to remove the last vestiges of our clinging, in particular to our merit and our body, we can offer a mandala to the refuge field. I think here this is your body, your merit, all sorts of ideas transformed into a wonderful pure land. And you're offering this to the merit field in front of us. So this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamyatayami. We've released the mandala. It's been accepted by the Buddha, who smiles at us with delight. And we look up into his face and we see those eyes smiling at us. Then an emanation of the Buddha leaves his own heart, moves through space, and comes to abide above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. The emanation descends, entering the crown of your head, going down through your body and resting at the level of your heart. This body of light begins to expand, filling your body and mind with light and nectars. And the nectars and the light pour out through the pores of your skin and fill the 10 directions of space, establishing every being within space to now be within the enlightened state. And the light begins to withdraw from the directions of space, re-entering your heart. And you can feel yourself breathing normally and naturally, and you know that you're sitting on a seat. You are embodied once again. And you know this. And you know that the meditation was done purely on the level of imagination. And while that is the case, nevertheless, it's put upon your mind a propensity to actualize the state of enlightenment for the benefit of others. So you accept that and breathe in deeply through your nostrils. Exhale through your mouth. Allow the eyes to flutter open and move your body in whichever way you'd like to, and just feel at home in your seat. Yeah. Okay, so as you know, this is the second of the units in this topic, recollecting death to benefit the future. And last week we looked at the benefits of recollecting death. I think there were sort of 6 put out, but there are many others. And we really looked at the topic, death is certain. And we know that this topic had sort of like three sub-points. The death cannot be avoided. And so the Lord of Death is definitely coming, so we can't avoid death. Our lifespan can't be increased. And there's not much time left to practice the dharma. There's not much time to prepare for our death. His Holiness says that this contemplation, it's not morbid and it's not unrealistic, because the fact is we are going to die. And what this, I guess, what we're trying to get at here is like, what do we do between now and then? And then knowing of death, what have we prepared ourselves to face or to experience? The conclusion drawn from all this is we need to practice the dharma. Today's topics, we're going to look at the problems that can arise when you forget the imminence of your death. And the topic we're going to look at today is the time of death is uncertain. And this topic again has 3 major parts. And the problems in forgetting death have 6 parts. And this is some of the material I've relied upon. And at present, I'm using this book, The Lamb Rim Year. So I found it very useful when you go through these Dharma topics to have something like that. And you can always go over to the topic and then see how you can meditate on it each day. And that way you gradually go through the material. Now, this material, the faults of not recollecting death and the certainty, the uncertainty of the time, is covered in all the books here. Some of them I just found, the wonderful thing about material like this, it's always presented in a slightly different way. So you can always pick up something that you find that really sort of hits you and makes an impact. So we'll just begin now by looking at these 6 faults that can arise when we do not remember the certainty of our death, when we actually forget it. So, this is the beauty. What have I done here? I've left 2 slides in from last week, folks, but I'll just briefly say a few words. No, I'll just go past one. When we talk about impermanence, we've got these, is it 5 or 6 things? 5, the benefits of recollecting your death. Sorry, there we go. 6 faults. I don't know how that happened, but I thought I'd chop
that was probably your typo person called Miffy probably forgot to check.
Yes, I actually changed the slide. Okay, here we go. Let's have a look. So we'll put them down in brief, number them 1 to 6, and then we'll go through each one of them slowly. So first of all, one of the faults when you forget death is that you don't remember the dharma. Actually, these 6 are terrific. I like them. Then, although you remember the dharma, you don't practice it. Although you do practice it, without recollecting death, you don't practice it purely. And then, of course, you're not very persistent in your practice. You don't have the sort of pressure of the knowledge of death. And so you preclude yourself from liberation by performing non-virtuous actions. And finally, of course, you die full of regret. Now, I'll say this again, we may not be able to bring about liberation for ourselves by the time we die. We might not have the skills to do that. We may not have the skills to become a fully enlightened being upon our death. But what we do have to have the skills, we do not want to preclude ourselves from, is rebirth as a human being with a leisure and opportunity to engage in practice again. We do not want to miss that. Otherwise, as Kitsura Rinpoche said, this life has been wasted. We want to achieve the smallest goal possible, which is a good rebirth upon our death. Miffy?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this list and thinking, well, I suffer from all of these, but I never put it together that it's because I haven't been remembering my own impermanence and imminent demise. Like, who'd have thought that all of these things tie up so nicely into one topic?
Yeah, that's right. You don't see it until you actually take the time to go through it and then put it all together and, your mouth drops open. You go, oh my God, that's how it is for me. So let's have a look at each of these and then we'll head to the major topic, which is, of course, the uncertainty of the time of death. So you don't remember Dharma. Well, again, I'll put up some of the major highlights. So when you don't remember Dharma, because you've forgotten death, then this is what consumes your life. This is what you do, or the life of the ordinary person. Everyone requires sleep, everyone eats, everyone drinks. They're engaged in some sort of business. And there's lots of conversations with people. And so we spend our life living like that. Secondly, we continually think only of how to achieve happiness in this life. It's as if we leave our death to the time of dying. And it's like, oh, I'll take care of it now. And as you know, you're not very good at doing things you're unfamiliar with. And the other thing that happens, if you've been around the Dharma for a while, you'll see this happen a lot. People try to evade only the sufferings of this life. This is, we'd say ordinary people behave like this. So the border of worldly activity and pure Dharma practice rests on the question of why you're doing it. If it's only for a temporary goal, such as profit or pleasure, well, this is no different than any other ordinary activity. So we've got to remember that when we practice Dharma, it's for those three goals. A fortunate rebirth so we can continue with our practice, liberation or enlightenment. So it's not one of those goals. If you've not set your intention with that type of goal, I just want to warn you, your practice won't be pure.
So, Eddie, how do we check up? You know, because I mean, we say our motivation and things, and sometimes it can end up being a bit like, you know, rote learning, yada, yada, yada. How do you actually check?
Well, I think...
and just stop the screen share for a moment while you're giving the answer.
So how do we check? So I take it this is a question for a Buddhist, Biffy. So a Buddhist has to check because they want their practice to be pure, right?
Yeah.
So I think what we've got to do is like come to what's our refuge? Because a Buddhist is somebody who's taken refuge. Right? That's the line.
Oh, okay. So because a lot of times, unless we bring our awareness to our Buddhist refuge, our refuge is ordinary things like entertainment, food, family.
Yeah, our refuge is the eight worldly concerns. You know, to avoid anything that makes us unhappy and do as much as we can in terms of entertaining ourselves and eating and sleeping, all those things for the happiness of this life. So you'll know that when you take refuge, your major act of that taking of refuge is to act in accordance with karmic cause and effect. So that from that, you'll know that the things of the external world cannot provide you with the happiness you're seeking. The refuge is an inner refuge. And actually that inner refuge is our own mind. So we've got to look after the mind while we're alive, because it's very difficult to do that in the what they call the between state of this life and another life. If we haven't controlled our mind here, we're not going to have any chance of controlling it there. So what we call Dharma practice has to be some sort of preparation for that future. Higher rebirth and the avoidance of the lower rebirth, liberation or enlightenment. And so recollecting death will remind us of that. That we're not going to be here very long. Future lives are multiple compared to just this one that we have at present. Many more things are going to happen to us. So what are we going to do in relationship to that? So death should remind you of that. And I think in that way, a lot of these other things are sort of, they're important, but they're nowhere near as important as the practice of Dharma. That's more important. Because death is certain, and as you'll see later on, its time is uncertain. So everything that we hold precious and meaningful in what we call ordinary life is going to be left behind.
Yeah, so then contemplating this way, it's like those things then just fall naturally into a lesser place, whereas we've kind of elevated them.
Yeah, that's right. At present, death and the time our death is way down the list, even if it's thought of at all. You'll find most people I said, I don't want to think about that. People say that, and most people don't. So what's most important at present is this life. So once that's reversed, we're on track. When this life becomes secondary and the future lives, liberation, enlightenment becomes primary, we understand this part of the teaching. Okay, so we'll have a look now at this the second part. So when we don't recollect death, when we forget death, we don't remember the Dharma. Now, so in other words, we go say, okay, so I still haven't remembered death, but I do remember Dharma, like one must do. But so then what happens? It's like, well, we don't practice it. Or we only practice it, sometimes. And we get distracted very easily. Our attention goes elsewhere. So, which means we're unable to prevent our own procrastination. Like I said, if you remember your death, it gives you a sense of urgency. But here we've forgotten, so we can take it easy. We don't engage ourselves with our practices. So in other words, the sadhanas you've been given, they fall to the side. If you don't have a sadhana and you're trying to practice mindfulness, you forget your mindfulness because your purpose is forgotten. You don't know what's threatening it. And practice becomes easily interrupted by the allure of worldly pleasure. And so basically what this is saying is that most of the way we act is based on the implicit belief that we and the people we care for won't die today. And often that sort of continues. It won't happen tomorrow either. It's like it sort of goes out of mind until it happens. And then it's a heck of a shock. And we're not distracted then. But we don't know what to do. So Geshe Sopa says, naturally, all your energy is directed toward finding happiness and protecting it once you think you have found it. All your worries are focused on eliminating unhappiness in this life. You become anxious about sickness, poverty, and your reputation. And so again, we're sort of kept within the grip of the 8 worldly concerns. So next week, I'm going to present a class dealing with these 8 worldly concerns and how we can actually interrupt the power they have over us. And that'll be included within the third section in this class.
Eddie, it's so funny with this thing of the unable to prevent procrastination because, that's just such a huge thing for me. And I've just read an article about university students, the majority of uni students suffering procrastination. And of course, it's because you think, you've got forever. But the moment it's threatened to be taken away from you, there's a time limit in there, procrastination's finished. So actually, but none of the self-help books about dealing with procrastination ever say, what about if you're going to die? But it'd be very effective.
So one of the ways we can procrastinate is also to be very busy. It's just not with Dharma. It's like with the worldly concerns. And of course, when it happens where we don't engage with religious practice, of course, always our practice becomes interrupted. Now, suppose we've still forgotten, we don't really pay much attention to the fact of our death. But we are practicing Dharma. We're practicing at least a little bit of it. But the practice that we do there is called impure practices because the practices really support the 8 worldly concerns. And so, of course, there are very few benefits in this life because the worldly concerns are really focused about this life. So, as I say, your own good reputation will be left behind, and over time, you won't even be remembered. You know, if you think of how many people have been on the earth since humanity's been on the earth, at least, and you think about how many people are actually remembered, the names of them, it's like there's very, very few, isn't there? Right? Well, it's going to be us. You know, we might be remembered, but we might not. We probably won't be within the very few. The vast majority of the names, what they did in that life, their experiences, they are forgotten. There's not much benefit. So Lama Zopa, from his book Wholesome Fear, says, what's more, if you don't remember death, even when you do practice the Dharma, that practice isn't pure and won't lead to complete liberation, because you've made your Dharma practice serve attachment as well. Denying death, even just subtly believing, well, I'm not going to die today, is the worst hindrance to making your Dharma practice pure. Then Geshe Sopa says, so this discussion does not mean that you should never do anything to achieve happiness and prevent suffering in your present life. Everyone wants to live happy, healthy, and have a decent life. And there's great benefit to staying alive to do that if you can. However, if the worldly concerns are your primary focus of this life, then even if you engage in virtuous behavior or meditate or perform rituals and so forth, it's all really for temporary goals. So I think it's, one of the things we can really help here is, you can see here, I think, how recollection of death really supports one's motivation. And the motivation supports the recollection.
Eddie, would part of this be like the few benefits in this life that, we think we're practicing Dharma, but it doesn't really have a big effect on us, or it doesn't seem to help? Is it because actually we've got this impure practice, so it's not very strong? Like we've kind of got it back to front?
Yep. So let's have a look at this next one, which is what I just sort of saying with you, right?
Right. Yep.
Because your practice is sort of polluted or sort of, not pure, it's got this thing called, it's putting with attachment and aversion. Now that makes it very, very hard to even be a Dharma practitioner. You'll find you still have lots of problems. So you might know people like this who've been in the Dharma for a long, long time, but they still seem to have lots of problems. And I suggest that has to do because our practice has been sort of polluted in some way with these outworldly concerns. So one thing that happens, of course, is you don't have much energy. And like I said, realization of death gives you that energy. You can't take your time anymore. So you don't have much energy. And of course, it becomes very difficult to practice. And one of the reasons for course of that is because the virtue is of meager strength. It's like being a good person for this life. So they say, well, this life is one life, future lives are like a many.
So Eddie, with this one too, like I'm just thinking of many social activists in the world that even though they're not religious or practicing for the next life, they're practicing for others. And that gives them the persistence. So, if not for their own life, for others' life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, so the persistence either way, we've got to take the focus off our own life. So even if we're not religious, we can still take something from this, about thinking how to get the power into your practice.
Yeah, the things that really drive the power are the suffering of others, of course, and your own death. One's own suffering, we have to recognize that. Death, it's like, well, there you go. And then think of the others, it becomes even more powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, from Geshe Sopa, he says, everybody admits that death will come. That's a certainty. But when will it come? So most people have a deep-seated feeling that death is not truly at hand, at least not anytime soon. Having this attitude works against us having the willpower to overcome the laziness of procrastination. In other words, we think, I'll just take it slowly. I'll do that later. Yeah, so we see, I don't know if this is the case with, well, it probably is the case with some people who are Buddhists, at least, especially if we are beginners. So you know that most of us put a lot of effort into work and status and family. So that requires a lot of energy. So for many of us, it's like, so we if we have a family and we are working, and it takes a lot of the energy, you sort of look after your family until like they leave, don't you? The kids have to leave. And then if you're lucky enough and you have a wife or a husband that is respectful about your practice and encourages it, well, that's great. But that might not be the case. You might have your partner who really goes, now we can last take holiday. Right? And so let's become part of the grave brigade, wandering around the world, having experiences, looking at different things. We might do that. Or the other thing, like I said, is that sometimes it's very hard to leave work, especially if you have status at work. So, of course, these things are front and center. They're what do we say? Their importance is prior to becoming enlightened.
Yeah, they dominate us.
They dominate us. It's a good word. So, we've got to sort of acknowledge that. It was like we saw like last week, there isn't very much time to practice dharma. And I would encourage you to look at your life and go, okay, so when did you first become a dharma person, a person of dharma? When did you take refuge? You can go, okay, so all the time before that was done for this life. Then you can take refuge and still be doing things for this life and not even know it. If any of you have read, there's a couple of books that Lama Zopa Rinpoche wrote. They are tremendous because he's telling you, I've been a monk for all these years and it's all been for the 8 worldly concerns. It's all been polluted and I had no idea. So I think that's a wonderful thing for somebody to say, because then we can go, wow, that could be me. Here's Lama Zopa. There's a lot of respect for Lama Zopa. But he himself said, for years, I had no idea all my practices were polluted by the 8 worldly concerns. So that's the case for him. It could be the case for ourselves. And it's great to have a book like that and to go through it and read the story, what he did in relationship to the 8 worldly concerns, how he caught them, how he caught the influence upon himself. This stuff's tremendous because, it's like somebody's gone on before us and told us, it was like this for me. And we can take all that experience and then look at it ourselves and go, well, is it like that for me? I mean, Dharma is, said to be like a mirror, isn't it? We look into the mirror of Dharma and we contrast our lives with the Dharma. And by doing so, we can really see where it's out of whack. So it's just really helpful that we can sort of moderate our own behavior and thinking and so forth, and sift out the 8 worldly concerns, because these things don't just stop because we recognize, oh, here's a problem. Now I've seen it, it's not a problem anymore. It's not like that. Yeah, so like I said, we think we've got long lives. So Dharma comes second. And so we cheat ourselves. We cheat ourselves. We become caught up in the concerns of this life only, and our disturbing emotions increase. And especially if we are like a Buddhist, and people know we are, then this sort of thing can come up. Because like he's meant to be a Buddhist, or she's meant to be a Buddhist, doing this spiritual person, but I see this is what they're doing. This is how they talk about the world. And so respect to the Buddha Dharma and the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha sort of diminish because we have cheated ourselves. So I sort of like this, because I often think this is what happens when we have not been able to put meaning into our lives. So then of course we drug ourselves out. Some people even kill themselves. Like life is sort of meaningless. But Dharma and the recollection of death, you can't be kind of like it's all meaningless now. Once you know that, you've changed your mind. It says, because you are deceived by the expectation that this life will last for a long time, you maintain a fierce attachment to wealth, fame, honor, and all the other worldly concerns. So even when you are engaged in what appears to be religious practice, in your heart, there is a fundamental selfishness. This attitude breeds the desire to destroy whatever gets in the way of satisfying your selfish needs and desires. So again, this is from Geshe Sopa's book. And finally, of course, sorrow. No long-lasting realizations, if you even call them realizations. Regrets and fear. Again from Geshe Sopa, a consequence of living exclusively for selfish enjoyment is that when you are dying, you will look back and see that all the struggles, challenges, and unpleasantness you faced were for the sake of temporary goals. Although they may have brought you a comfortable life, at the time of death, you realize that none of it had any benefit for the future. I just remember I was watching a series of about Australian crime, and what jumped out at me was the most common expression that all the criminals said, and it was, "I'm sorry." And I was just thinking like this, that's what happens, man. You blow it. You blow it, and now it's right in front of you. Right? That what you did was foolish. There's no benefit. You're going to leave it all behind. So it's probably a very good idea not to have that happen to us. And actually to be on our deathbed and say, no, actually I've led a meaningful life. Even if it began at 40 or even 50. From then on, I understood. And I've been doing the very best I can to be an unselfish person, that I'm doing this practice for the benefit of others. I've deliberately changed my life. So something like that, that might be the best you can come up with, but that's good. It's a lot better than, like I said, dying with sorrow and regrets because you didn't use your life in the most effective way you could have. So again, I'll just put up the slides. We had this also last week, but I sort of like it because it's just true. It says your life dwells amongst the causes of death like a lamp standing in a strong breeze. So when lamps are put in strong breezes, they often get blown out. That's what happens to them. So our life is like that. There are strong breezes all around us. So it's amazing that the lamp is even lit, isn't it? And it's actually on, right? And then, like I said, go out any time. So it's amazing that we're here. That we're here as human beings with this life that we've got, and we've actually come into contact with the Buddha Dharma. That is like amazing, isn't it? And while that's incredibly amazing, the best use we can make of that life is supported by our recollection of death. That this light, this brief flickering of wisdom and compassion can be blown out just like that. It hasn't yet, right? It hasn't yet. We're here. We've got to shine our light. And we need to do this like as quickly, like now, as we discovered last week. We have to start like now because the time of death is uncertain. Now it's uncertain because the lifespan in this world is uncertain. It's, as you all know, it's not the case that everybody will die at 40 or like in Soylent Green. It's like, it's now. It's not like that here, right? You can die in the womb, you can die while you're being born, you can die as soon as you're born, and you can die any time after your birth. And a lot of it has to do with the fragility of the body we have. And as well as that, this is because the causes of death are profuse. You can die so many different ways. In fact, I've got a lovely one of my books last week. I talked about graceful exits. But I also have another book here of all the different ways that human beings have died. It's like, oh my God. So I buy these books of course I read them, because I think it's like, you can go any way like that. Any other way anyone else has gone, you can go that way, and probably some way that no one else has gone before. I mean, it's possible. So let's look at some of these. The reading which goes with this. But you guys have any questions about what I said before about these the 6 faults when forgetting death?
Eddie, just stop the screen share so you can see and put it onto gallery.
Yeah, those faults are tremendous, aren't they? I mean, I love how they just go, it's like cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. And so it doesn't take much, so you can say, okay, so at the time of death, I die with sorrow and regret. What? Why? What was I doing before that? And then you go, number 5, what was happening before that? You say, oh, geez, the practice wasn't pure. And why wasn't it pure? Why wasn't it strong? And so you can sort of go backwards and then go forwards. It's really nice doing that. And like you say, you can have the piece of paper right in front of you, and just go forwards and backwards, and just let it sort of sink into you. Yep.
Eddie, I saw just the other day a show called Bondi Rescue. So they're saving people from drowning in the surf. And the show was, that particular one was where there was a tsunami. And so everyone's there. It's all sunny on Bondi Beach. And they've got this prediction, a tsunami's coming in 8 hours. Or a tsunami's hit and it's coming across the ocean and we're going to close the beach because it's due like between 6 and 8 hours. Yeah. So, you know, when it was due, they closed the beach about an hour earlier. But like they're just like, no, it looks fine. It looks fine. Right. Some of the people are like, quick, get to higher ground. And they're totally freaked out, which is also revealing, isn't it? Because we think it's not going to be today until there's a tsunami warning. And then suddenly it's like, oh my God. But the rest, because it just looks fine, you just can't compute.
No, and that's right.
Even when there's like, you know, it's there, it's predicted, there's satellite imagery, this wave is rolling across the ocean. It's just like, nah, the sun's shining, I want to have a dip.
That's right, we'll still just talk about it.
or the ones like, no, I'm not scared. I'm not scared of any tsunami.
Yeah, you see, probably there, the responses to the tsunami are very similar to the ones of our death, aren't they? And, you know, some of you will be familiar with that saying, appearances are deceptive. So this is a common saying within the Buddha Dharma. It looks like this, but in fact it's not. It's real common right across the world of appearances. So that's also something to think about. It might look like we're in good health and happy and so forth. In fact, that may not be the case at all. It looks like we've got a long time to live. It looks like we'll be here tomorrow and so forth.
Because the other thing, Eddie, that people often, that I hear again and again when someone has just died and people will say, but I only saw them last week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, that's right. We're shocked, don't we? That's right.
They were just here yesterday.
Yeah. When I get that, when I look at, you know, I have this website I go to called, you know, what on that site is a lot of stories about dead actors and actresses. Yeah, it's like I'm shocked. I go, oh, they're dead. Or if they're alive, wow, they're still alive.
Is that like some Hollywood ghoulish, dead Hollywood website or something, Eddie?
No, I'm just trying to, I wish I could remember. It's
Follies of God.
Follies of God. Thank you, Sue. The Follies of God. So I love reading the stories from that. You know, that intelligent people saying, you know, smart things. But yeah, the vast majority of them are dead now.
Did anyone have any questions? Do you want to just wave your hand or raise your virtual hand or anything?
Can you tell us? Well, have a look along the top, see if there's any hands raised. Hello, Shayla. No, no hands raised. He's waving, but that's good. Okay, let's move on then. Just have a look at this. The time of death is uncertain, and the slides that go with it. Okay. So like I said, here's a major title, the three things that support it, and the result of it. This has to be, I need to engage it like right now. So we'll go through each of these. So lifespan in this world is uncertain. So I chose this picture because they're all in a waiting room. And they're all of different ages. And as you can see, what they're going through is into a black room. So it sort of symbolizes that we have all these people here of different ages, afflicted in all different ways, and they're going into death. So as I said before, the people die at all ages. And often people think that I just need to do this or I do that, or I'll engage in practice when these things have happened. And they're unable to. Life finishes before that. So, in fact, I remember reading a story about a person who went along to a teaching on death and impermanence and the uncertainty of death, and actually died in the classroom. And so they were eating these types of lollies and just choked. And you might remember that story. There's a lovely story about a man who tried to escape death. And so he ran away from death to another city. And death was there. And said, "Oh, I'm so surprised to see you here. I expected to see you elsewhere." And another one, you might remember the story of a man who had his death had been foretold to happen on this particular day, and it was the day, and he hadn't died yet. So he was there thinking, well, like, this is great. I'm not dead. I haven't died. So while he's thinking that, he's like poking his ear like this, can't quite get in. So I'll just get a longer matchstick or a toothpick or something, just get it in there. So he's like in there fiddling around, and the wind blows the window, and the window bangs into his arm, and his arm goes into there, and then he's dead. So yeah, it's just, I think everyone knows it's uncertain. People die, and animals and birds, everything dies at different rates, different times. There's no thing that says everybody at 30, 40, 60, 80.
So, Eddie, I remember one class that we had like this where one of our students was here. She's in a wheelchair and has, really severe health difficulties and a deteriorating body. And so we were having this class, and she put her hand up and said, well, obviously I'm dying. I'm going to die before all of you, and you're blah, 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 blah. And it was even then this assumption with both her and the rest of the class, as if that was going to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turns out, like, this is 5 or 6 years later, and she's still coming to classes online, and 2 other people from that class have died.
Have died. That's right. Yep. So one of the things about that really contributes to death taking place at any time is just the fragility of our very own body. So many, many circumstances can lead to death, and very few can lead to one's survival. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama says in the Foundation for Buddhist Practice on page 209, many circumstances lead to death and fewer lead to survival. Great effort is required to stay alive. We must feed our body and protect it from heat, cold, disease, and injury. It takes a lot of planning and effort to keep this body alive. Whereas if we did nothing, our body would simply die of dehydration or starvation. So I remember that when I was much, much younger, sort of being upset that I have to do so much to stay alive. Like you got to do all the stuff going to school, then you've got to leave school, and you've got to get a job, and then you've got to feed yourself, and you've got to do all the stuff. I'm just kind of like, oh man, like it's a bit of a hassle being a human being, isn't it? Yeah, so a lot has to be done. We can't just do nothing and expect to stay alive. That's not going to happen. So a lot of effort is expended on keeping the body functioning, because briefly the body is quite fragile. In fact, my dad, so he died because he was gardening in Thailand. Gardening in his bare feet. He didn't realize that just this little, there was something in the soil, it just come up into his body, and within about 2 weeks he was dead. And so very little things can kill us, as, you know, as we know this. But it's something we forget. So it's what we know, and then we forget. We don't remind ourselves. Which leads to the third one here: the causes of death are very, very many, and the causes of life few. So you might see this is very similar to what I just said, and in terms of what I said, it is. So here again from the Dalai Lama, he says, even things meant to protect life, such as medicine, food, shelter, and transportation, can inadvertently cause death. Microscopic viruses and bacteria may cause death. Small pieces of metal can kill you. Our physiological systems are delicate and easily become unbalanced, leading to illness and death. While medical science has made tremendous advancements, it has not been able to stop death. And sometimes the treatment we take for illness has side effects that actually hasten death. So this is also true, isn't it? Many of you might know people who've gone in for a life-saving operation and they die on the operation table. You know, it's the operation that kills them.
Yeah, but Eddie, somehow we think there's something fundamentally wrong with that, rather than
right.
that it's a reality.
Yeah.
And also, like at the moment, there's this incredible heat wave going through Europe, and so just yesterday, 200 people died of the heat, just of a change of degree.
Yeah, that's right. And so, as you know, with the climate change, a lot of people talking about these sort of things. And yet, there's a whole group of people that it's like, death is secondary, profits first. We've got this thing here in Australia where working is more important than your health. Well, we want people to keep going out to work and making money. And meanwhile, we've got COVID rampant through the country. It's like, death, that's secondary, mate. Or they say, that's your responsibility. You look at that.
Well, or actually what they're saying is it doesn't matter because it's only people over 75 anyway. Yeah. I mean, that's the brutal thought that's underlying all of this. So this kind of thought that if you're so-called old, then it doesn't matter, but also that it won't be me because I'm not old.
Yeah, so let's say a couple of words from Geshe Sopa. So he's saying it's important to develop an awareness of the impermanence of life long before these unpleasant effects take place. Thinking about death in the present doesn't lead us to death. Right? On the contrary, it brings a lot of benefits. But at present, we're not accustomed to this way of thinking. So if you try to engage in this thinking, you might become like depressed and exhausted. But these teachings, like I said, show us how to think about death and how to look forward to future lives. In fact, I'll tell you what, so just recently, I went out with a friend of mine who works in a hospice for dying children. And she said this really wonderful thing happened there just recently. Where,
can you just stop the share for a moment so we can see you?
Okay, thank you. Where she's walked into the young child has died and the family have come in, and she walks past the room and all she can hear is laughter, lots and lots of laughter. So this is very unusual. So she pops her head in and says, hello, and introduces herself and so forth. And then asks, so everybody seems like really happy. What's going on? And they said, we're so happy that we could do everything that we did to look after this child, and now they're no longer suffering in this world. And she said, this is so different. It's only happened once. That's what she was telling me. She said, you know, everyone else comes in here and there's a lot of sorrow and grief. But like her family, this child's family knew that, you know, there's no escape here. This child must die. So what to do? And what they did was behave virtuously, behave with a good heart, behave unselfishly, help as much as you can. And one way of looking at yourself, said, well, I did good. And fantastic. This child no longer has to bear the suffering in this world. So this is, you know, just another way of sort of, you know, I think it's valid, it's a useful way of thinking. It's not out of harmony with the way things are, is it? So this, you know, this is a benefit. In fact, I think it's not uncommon for many people to think that, the living, to think of the dead. Well, thank goodness this suffering is over. They won't have to suffer this anymore. And we see this in the movies, and I've even heard people say it over the deathbeds of the dead. Now, so I want to put you up this quote before coming to this conclusion that I must practice Dharma now. So this, I love this quote, and I might have even tried to say it last week, but I blew it. So this is a man called Gangtang Rinpoche. So he says this, you know, perhaps 20 years of remembering that one should do a practice, perhaps 20 years of being forever about to do a practice, and then perhaps another 10 years of saying, like, I never did the practice. This is the story of an empty and wasted human life. So, you know, I'm just going to assume that everybody here is a Buddhist and is trying to practice as a Buddhist. So, you know, we have practices to do. Some of them may be sadhana practices. Others are just trying to, you know, develop bodhicitta, get wisdom into the reality and so forth. Yeah, don't be like this. don't put it off. So in relationship to this quote, Geshe Sopa says, first, you should try to learn what to practice. Then begin to meditate topic by topic every day. Gradually, your mind will become accustomed to this way of thinking. You'll begin to perceive things differently, and you will begin to act differently. That's the purpose of meditation and practice. When finally your mind settles on the side of, I am going to die, instead of I'm not going to die, all the benefits accrue. There's great advantage in thinking about impermanence and death. This is not only for Buddhists. It's helpful for any serious religious practitioner whose goal lies beyond the pleasures of this life. Now we come up with this lovely statement. I have to practice the Dharma like right now. So Lama Tsongkhapa says that this topic, the uncertainty at the time of death, is the most important of these three primary topics. So we've done the first, this is the second, this is the most important one. So you should think about this particular topic and those three reasons in detail from as many points of view as you can. This will change your belief that you will be alive for a long time into a recognition that you may not even be here the next moment. And this recognition will diminish attachment to this life. your mind will then tend toward preparing for your inevitable death rather than preparing for a long life. So thinking and meditating on the topic, time of death is uncertain. Therefore, I'll practice the Dharma right away. I'll not leave it until tomorrow. I will do it immediately, starting right now. So really, so when you start Dharma practice, it begins with the motivation. So until that motivation is so deeply instilled within us that we just are naturally working in alignment with our motivations and intentions, we have to deliberately remind ourselves of what we're doing. So His Holiness says it's to our advantage to prepare ourselves for death, whenever it comes. The way to do this is by developing a stable spiritual practice now, so we can accumulate as much spiritual strength, as much virtue and Dharma understanding as possible while we are alive. This also makes it more likely that we will have a virtuous mental state should death come suddenly. Arya Sura warns us that between the two, tomorrow and the next life, which will come first is uncertain. Therefore, do not make effort in the means for tomorrow. It's right to make effort for the welfare of the next life. Seeing the time of death as uncertain, let's start transforming our minds today. Since death may come at any time, we cannot afford to postpone our Dharma practice until conditions are more suitable. So remember, like I said, Dharma is primarily to do with your mind and the intentions that you place in the mind, how you direct in your mind. This determines whether it's Dharma or non-Dharma. That's something we can all do, whether we're dying on the side of the road, in a hospital bed, or about to go to work. As long as we have the capacity to think, we can make life Dharma.
That's a great quote, Eddie. The what will come tomorrow or the next life is uncertain.
Oh,
that's brilliant.
That's for sure. So I've sort of brought up a number of different points that Khenso Rinpoche set out many years ago as a type of meditation. So we do a topic like this, and he'd go through and go, okay, we're going to, what's the type of meditation called? An analytical meditation. So we take what we've learned and we apply it with a few brief lines. We just run it down. So this is what came out of those teachings. He said, look, the finality of birth is death. So we have all been born. The final outcome of us being born is our death. That time is indefinite. Everything that has been gathered will separate. So your friendships that you've gathered, you will be separated from them. Your family, your wealth, your name, the bed you're in, the body you're in, it's all going to separate. Everything that's been accumulated is consumed with impermanence, by impermanence. It's natural. The end of our rising comes descent. So, to what shall I turn for refuge? So now, like I said before about the intention, right? So intention is mental. So the place you're going to turn to for refuge is your own mind. You'll always end there. Whether you're lying, if you just imagine you're lying in a bed, your death is certain. There's nothing that can stop it. What's there is your consciousness. The body can't do very, very little. It's preparing to abandon you. Yeah? The mind is going to be left. So that's where you're going to be, with the mind. So these questions should arise, like how do I want to be with that mind? Like I want to have a real good, friendly relationship with my mind. My mind is my friend, it's not an enemy. Those sort of things, the actuality that comes about through dharma. You remember one of the things of dharma, the meaning, to hold us back from suffering. That's its function. So if we have dharma in mind, we will hold ourselves back from the sufferings of the lower realms, for sure. We don't have the cause is not there when we're held back. We don't have that cause. So our takeaway for today, you have knowledge of the 6 problems that can arise when you ignore death. And like I said, I suggest you run it forwards and backwards. And you can, like I said, you get sort of like a rhythm to it. Right? So yeah, that's right. I forgot this. I forgot dharma. I forgot this. Remember dharma, but then I didn't practice it. Oh God, I forgot this. Remember dharma, I practiced it, but it was about this life. It's not pure. I forgot this, and then I went to pure, but I wasn't very strong. So it's true. That's the lovely thing about it. It's true. You can actually relate it back to your experience and go, wow, it's just like that. Run it forwards, run it backwards, and get this thing and go, okay, I'm going to practice dharma. Time my death is uncertain. Death is certain. Time of death is uncertain. I've got to practice right now, today. So as the time of death is uncertain, we must practice dharma like right now. So how do you think we're going to practice it right now? I think what we can do is we can dedicate our virtue, seal it with emptiness.
So Eddie, just stop the share and see if there's any last questions, just in case. It's a very quiet
Sure.
group.
Just in case is good. So do you see anybody's hand waving with you? I'll move along the top and go, no. People's faces I can't see. And
yeah, Ilanda.
Hello, Ilanda's waving her head. Go for it.
I wanted to know what book you read from the Dalai Lama, and I think the page that you quoted was page 209.
Okay, that book is called The Foundation of Buddhist Practice.
Okay.
And I think it's either volume 1 or volume 2 in this wonderful series of, I think they've got 7 books at the moment, 6 or 7 books at the moment, by His Holiness and Venerable Thupten Chodron. If you read those books, you'll like them.
Okay.
Really nice writing. Okay then, so let's engage in some Dharma. Of course, we've already been engaged with the Dharma. We set our motivation. We want to become fully enlightened, to bring about the enlightenment of all sentient beings. God, excuse me, I'm going all funny. And so we've actually engaged in listening. We've certainly been thinking about it and reflecting upon it. And I do believe we can all practice Dharma like right now. So we can do that by dedicating these merits, which have no true existence. They exist in mere name. And they bring about the result of full enlightenment, because all things lack inherent existence and exist in mere name. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, May I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. And may the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow, and may that born have no decline but increase forevermore, such that as long as space abides and as long as sentient beings abide, we too will remain to dispel the sufferings of the world. So we've come to the end of our class. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. And we can actually remember to put dharma into practice, like as soon as possible today. Okay.
And
So,
we all came to the end of the class, except we did lose one person. So I hope we just lost them from the class and not from the world. And I hope to see you all again next week.
yeah, that's right. I hope we have the merit to be all here next week, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much for being with us. Okay, bye-bye.